All right, so we had a really good question in the community about how to use audio in markers. I'm not exactly sure what the context of the question was for the person in the community, but it was a good question. Allows us to explore markers, which is really why these quick tips are nice, because you can learn about the feature and you kind of learn a lot of the nuance of production as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the markers work in Storyline out of the box. And then we'll look at some tips and tricks around that. I always throw a few bonus tips in there as well. So if you've never used a marker in Storyline, the way it works is you've got a slide, you go to Insert, you go to Marker, and you have these pre-built markers. Now these markers are form-based, so that means they kind of have a structure to them. So if I insert a marker, we'll just grab this one, and I insert a marker on the screen, you can see it comes with the marker and then it comes with the label. And then you can add your content in there. You can see there's options up here, things that you can do, colors, and all of that. But it's kind of minimal in terms of what you can do because you have this pre-built structure. You add it on the screen and then you add your content. So it's form-based. In the resource page, and I'll have a link to that, we do a webinar on how to create custom markers. So if you want something more custom, then that would be your option, because the form-based authoring makes it really easy to add the content, the markers on the screen. The downside of that is that you have a form-based product and there's a constraint to that. So if you don't want the constraint, you can always build your own markers using the objects and states and layers and triggers, and you can create pretty much anything you want from that perspective. So what we're going to do is look at how the markers work out of the box with audio, and then some of the things that you can do. Now, one of the things you'll notice is if you come up here, once you have a marker, when you come up here, you can add audio, you can add media. So you can add audio, pictures, video. When you add audio to that, and that's just going to be a matter of add audio. When you add audio to that file, what you're going to get is the audio inside the marker, and what plays the audio is when you click the marker. So there's not like click the marker and open it up and then play audio, which I think is what the person was trying to do. So you don't have like an audio player inside the marker. So the marker itself is you click it and you expose what's in there. So if you click it, you show the text. If you click it and there's video, the video plays. If you click it and there's audio, the audio plays that. So that kind of becomes your play button. So we'll look at what we can do out of the box, and then we're going to look at how to actually build some other things. So let's go ahead and do this preview first. We're going to preview the entire scene. I'll talk about some different approaches. So this is just audio in the marker, and hopefully you can hear it when we do it. So like I said, I got my audio, I've got my label. This is default. I have audio in there. When I click this, it's going to open the label, which is then going to trigger playing the audio.
I think this is really important and we need to discuss it at the next project meeting.
And I just used the text-to-speech audio. That's why it sounds a little robot-y. So clicking it closes it. Clicking it opens it.
I think this is really important and we need to discuss.
So that's that. You also have an option, if you don't want the label, but you just want to play audio, there's an audio only option by default. Now I changed the buttons and I'll show you how to do that. So I put a selected state on here. So you can see I click it, it plays audio.
I think this is really important and we need to discuss.
And I click it and it stops the audio. So it's basically I'm clicking, opening the label. We just don't see the label. We just have the audio, and I click it again and it closes the label. Now, if you want more control, like in this case, if we come back here.
I think this is really important and we need to discuss it at the next project meeting.
I think the course author wanted this to open up and then have an option to play audio. You can do that. You're kind of limited, so you have to use a hyperlink. And then you can put the audio somewhere. So you can put the audio on your timeline. You can put the audio in a layer. And then on this case, I have the audio actually sitting on a timeline. So I open the label. The audio doesn't play. And then I can create a hyperlink. And when I click on it,
I think this is really important and we need to discuss it at the next project meeting.
So you can see that it plays the audio. Now you have to always think about the context, right? Because If you're just playing this audio of the text, then you may not need that, right? But if you wanted to reach, again, I don't know the context, but if you wanted to play the audio independent of the label, then you can put the audio on a timeline, you can put the audio on a layer, you can click. Now this is the audio on a timeline, and we'll build all this out so you can see why you would maybe do one over the other. Now what I did here is it's the same thing, but instead of the audio being on the timeline, the audio plays a layer. I like to separate that audio. Like, let's say I had 10 markers on this screen. I'd have 10 markers and then 10 audio tracks. So I could actually just create a layer that has the audio tracks on them. And then what I do is when I click on this, this is just, show layer, and then layer is going to play the audio, and then I'm done, right? So then it allows me on my timeline. It's a little bit more neat when I'm working on my project. And then I thought, well, what if you had multiple markers? Like this one's easy. It's just one marker. So you get the marker, and then you can show the audio on the timeline. But let's say you had 10 markers. Then you'd have 10 markers on the screen. You'd have 10 audio tracks. Why not just put the marker and the audio track on its own layer? And then you have a really nice clean base slide. And when you click a marker, it's just playing that layer. So that's what I have here. And so basically the way it works is I have a trigger that shows all of the layers. So this is layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. For the end user, it looks like they're all on the same slide. And I can click on it, and then it
I think this is really important, and we need to discuss it at the next project meeting.
So we'll look at how to build that. So let's come to our demo file here. So we go to our practice. So the first one we're going to look at is just audio and a marker. We'll look at how the markers work. So I'm just going to come up to Insert, choose a marker, and you've got a number of markers. You can start with the blank one. We'll just make it look like this is the subject matter expert talking. It's always good to title things, so we'll just say this is TED marker, right? Or if you have a lot of markers, you might do something like M for marker and then TED, so come up with a consistent naming structure. I'm going to show you another thing. This stuff, TED and the woman and the other stuff, this is all on the background, right? So sometimes what I do is I'll take this and I'll do Control G. Now they're all grouped, and I can just call this background, and I'll lock it so I can't accidentally move it. So the only thing I can really select on this screen is the marker. So that's just kind of a bonus tip in there. So we've got marker TED. I'm going to add some text in here. We'll say TED says, and then we can add text, right? So whatever, I am TED, and that's your text, and you can size the markers and do things. You can come in here, select your text if you want to make it really big, right? So a lot of things you can do with the markers. If you come into the format, you can see you can change the icon. So if you wanted this to point like down to TED, you could do that. So it's pointing to TED. You can change the color scheme. This is all going to be based on your theme colors. So you can see there's some options. If you want to add audio, you can add audio here. You can add other media in here as well. And then you have some like animation, you have pulsing, swirling, none. There's different things you can do. You can show everything. Like right now, if I use the marker, it would just show the title so I know what it is, and I click and it opens it. But if I want everything to open when I hover on it, I can do that. Or in the other example we showed was just audio only, and I don't need the label. I just want to play the audio. I can just do audio only on the marker. So this is just audio in the marker. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to insert. I have an audio file, so I'm going to insert the audio file that I already recorded. All right, so here's my audio file. I'm going to insert that. And now there's audio here. Now you're probably asking, well, how do I know if there's audio? If I come in here, I can see the option to delete the audio. If there's no audio, I'd only have these two options. All right, so we have audio on there. So now if I preview this, and again, this is the default. If I click, it's going to play the audio.
I think this is really important, and we need to discuss it at the next project meeting.
And then I close it. So that's the way it works out by default. But as you can see, the audio plays automatically because the marker, in a sense, is a play button. If you just want audio only, we'll just copy this marker here, and I'm going to come to audio only. The only difference with audio only is you don't get the label, so you can go to your format for your marker, come over here, and there's audio only. And when I click on this, it's only going to play the audio.
I think this is really important and we need to discuss it at the next project meeting.
So you can see that's why we call it audio only. All right, so so we've got that. That's kind of out of the box. Now, like, what do we do if we get to where like the user said, they want to have control over playing the audio? You can do that. You just have some limitations when you're using these pre-built markers. So what you can do is you can add the audio on the timeline, which I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and insert audio on the timeline. Actually, I'm going to show you a bonus feature since we're here. You can just use text-to-speech if you want quick audio. So go to Insert, and then we're going to go to Audio up here, and then you can do text-to-speech, and we'll just go, this is audio on the timeline, and just choose a voice, hit Insert. Storyline's going to build that. So it's a good way to get some demo audio, even if you're not ready to record narration. So we have our audio on the timeline. Now, because the audio is on the timeline, when we hit play, this is going to play automatically, right? So let's go ahead and hit preview. You should hear the audio just starts automatically.
This is audio on the timeline.
All right. And the reason it's starting automatically is because it's at the front end. So we want to put a trigger on here that just tells it to pause the audio. So let's go ahead and add a trigger. What do we want to do? We want to pause media. Which media? And we've got this text-to-speech 1, and we'll say when the timeline of the slide starts. So as soon as the slide starts, the audio is paused. We won't hear it. Now we can insert a marker, right? And I'm going to insert my marker. We'll just go here, insert a marker. All right, we'll just insert a marker here. We'll just say TED. We'll just say subject or whatever the information is, information, right? Info. And then in this case, you know, there's probably a reason why you need a listen marker. So you can say, you know, check this and that. Here, what the SME suggests. All right, so there's a reason why we need to have the audio, right? Oops, my typing isn't great, and my eyesight's not great either, so I'm going to make this larger so I can see that. Okay. So I want to hear what the SME suggests. So all I need to do is we'll just select that text. You can go into the trigger, so you go to Insert, Trigger. I'm going to do Control K. That's going to open up the trigger panel, and then I'm going to say I want to play media. What media do I want to play? Text-to-speech 1 when the user clicks on that text. So now we've controlled the audio playing. Click. There's no audio.
This is audio on the timeline.
There is audio. So that audio is on the timeline, right? But now if I had 10 markers and I had 10 pieces of audio or 20 pieces, I might put multiple hyperlinks in there. That could get really messy when you're looking at the slide. So sometimes what I like to do is I like to put the audio on a layer, because it doesn't, you don't have to have something visual on the layer. You can just have the audio on the layer. So we're going to come over here and we're going to create a layer right here. We're going to say audio 1. And I'm just going to put my audio track on the layer. I'm going to copy this audio so we don't have to redo that. So we're going to come in the layer. So we're inside the layer and we posted the audio. The audio is going to play automatically, right? Because we don't have the trigger up here. So all I need to do now is jump to the layer. It's going to play the audio. So let's go ahead and insert a marker. We'll just do another marker here, and we'll put text, right? And we'll put link here, and then I'm just going to highlight the here, or link here, I guess. Do Control K. What do I want to do? I want to show layer, audio 1 when the user clicks the link here. Now, if I had multiple layers. Let's say I'm duplicate this. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. Let's say this was audio 2, right? If you look at layer properties right here, by default, it's going to hide other slide layers. So if I'm on audio 1 and then I click and I play audio 2, audio 1 is going to stop because it's going to hide this layer and it's going to jump to audio 2. So you can have multiple layers and then the audio will stop as you jump through the different layers. So this is a good thing to do if you have, if you had something where you had like, a whole bunch of markers on the screen, then you might not want to have a whole bunch of other audio files to go with that, right? So then this timeline gets really big and then it's a little bit harder to kind of manage that. So if you put the audio on the layers, then the timeline becomes smaller. The other thing, the last tip here is you could really put all of these markers and the audios on the layer, and then it cleans this whole timeline up. And let's go ahead and look at that. Because if you imagine, if you had, let's go ahead and copy this. If you had a slide with, 10 markers on it, which is not outlandish, there's a lot of them like that, right? So if if you start adding markers and you start adding layers, right, this whole thing becomes really big and a little less easy to manage, right? But if you're on the layer, you only see what's unique to that layer. So what we're going to do on this one, we're going to look at how to actually add audio and markers on their own layers. And then we're going to really compress the timeline, because what we're going to do is let's select everything that's on this slide already. We're going to do Control G, and we'll say this is the background, right? We're going to lock it. All you see on the timeline is one thing, and you don't even have to mess with this. We're going to come to this first layer, and we'll just call it 1. What we're going to do is we're going to insert a marker, right? We have a marker here, and then on this marker, we'll just say, marker. Doesn't really matter what it says, right? Here is the audio you can hear. And then let's make this larger so people like me can see this. All right. And then we're going to say audio you can hear. We'll do Control K. I need to actually have audio on here. So let's copy the audio we had here just to make it easy. And we're on our marker. So we've got, marker 1. We'll say audio, or let's say this was Ted talking, Ted 1, right? So you got marker 1, Ted 1 on layer 1. And so we've got that here. What we want to do is come in here. You can hear, do Control K. What we're going to do is say play media. Which media do we want to play? We want to play Ted 1 when the user clicks you can hear. Now we don't want this to play automatically, so we're going to put another trigger up here. We're going to say pause media, Ted 1 when the timeline starts on this layer. Okay, so timeline starts on the layer, the media pauses, you click the marker, it opens, you click the text, and you'll play the audio. Let's say I had 20 layers like this, right? We're only going to do 4. So I'm going to duplicate these just to keep it easy. So that's 2, 3, and 4. All right. So I've got 4 layers, and we'll just move these things around. So it's 2, we'll put over here, 3, I think probably 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we can see that they're moving around. All right, so let's make sure the triggers work. So play audio here, play audio and stop. We're going to say play media. I need to do this. Now what I would do, since this is marker 1, Ted 1, I kind of just want to come in here and I would title these, right? Just so when you're looking at layers, you can kind of see what's going on there. So this is 3, because you don't want to like be in marker 2 and then you see Ted 3, right? You want it to kind of be consistent. So it's easier when you're troubleshooting, trying to figure out what's going on. All right. So we just need to go play media, TED 4. This is working. Play media, TED 3. Play media, TED 2. Play media, TED 1. All right. So what do we get? We preview this. We're just going to get the slide because we don't have anything showing the markers. So if we come back to the marker properties here, let's go to the layer. We come to the properties. You can see it says hide other slide layers. So we're going to say uncheck that. And I'm just going to keep this open and I can uncheck it. You can also, if you had, let's do 3 and 4, you can uncheck it and that should have unchecked them all. So you can see you can batch do that. So now they all are going to allow all the layers to show. Now what we want to do here is we want to have a trigger to show all of these. So we're going to come to the main slide and we're going to put a trigger on here. What do I want to do? I want to show layer 1 when the timeline of the slide starts. And I'm just going to copy this and paste it. And then we're going to say show layer 2, show layer 3, show layer 4. So what's going to happen is, since they're all allowing the other layers to show, when the timeline starts, all 4 layers are going to show. So we preview this. You can see all 4 layers show. I click. Obviously, you got some issues you got to consider with the stacking order and how you do things, but that's something you can work around. But the main point is you can show all 4 layers. And then with that, you have now better production control, right? Because it doesn't matter if it's on the base layer. But now when we look at the base layer, all you got is that one line. But each layer now has its own area that you can control. And so it gives you a little bit more control over the production. So when you're looking at things, you can isolate that. I see that all the time. People will share files in the community, and then when you're looking at those files, it's just a massive amount of stuff all on the base layer. And it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out what's going on. So I kind of like to use the layers to kind of separate some of the production. So a couple simple tips. So one is we learned how the markers work out of the box and some of the things you can do, and a few bonus tips on how to work with those and the layers and all of that. Hopefully that helps you out and something you can use in your projects.